Hi, it's Wendy again, and this is the third video in the session 5.1 lesson for those of you that have a Monday class. In the first video, we just talked quickly about two-string, and in the second video, we started to learn about basic enumeration. So we created this nice day of the week enumeration, and we modified our main class that had constants originally. It was all constants. And we talked about what happens if we want to print the day of the week in title case. We talked about with our pizza size, what if we want to assign a price to each pizza size? And I'm going to talk about how to do those things in this video. Let's see. So let's say, for example, I want to create, I'll do this in my enum examples. So let's say I want to create an enumeration. I'm going to create a new enum called coin. Yikes. There we go. And what this coin enumeration is going to do is it's going to contain and I'm in Canada, so for the Canadian coins, they all have a name. So we have, for example, a penny, we have a nickel, we have a dime, we have a quarter, we have a loonie, and we have a toonie where the spelling is, we were taught when toonies first came out, okay, I'm aging myself. When toonies first came out, we used to have paper $2 bills. They were spelt like this, toonie, because they were a $2. The loonie was called the loonie because it had a loon on it. I think it still does, even though it's a $1. So toonie was called TWO, knee, because it rhymed with loony. But people are spelling it toonie, and that's fine. You can spell it however you want, but I'm going to spell it toonie because that's what it was supposed to be. And I'm old and I like things to stay the way they are. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just anal about spelling, so that's why. So penny, nickel, dime, quarter, loonie, toonie. Not everybody knows what these names mean. So I get a lot of international students that don't know what a dime is, and that's okay. Because if I went to your country, I probably wouldn't know what the heck all of your coins were called either. And my background is from the UK, and I barely remember what all of the UK coins are called and they changed the numbering, and anyways, it's way more confusing over there. So I get it. So maybe to some people, these names don't really mean much, or they have a hard time remembering. So what we might want to do is we might want to add a way to say, like, penny is 1 cent, nickel is 5 cents, dime is 10 cents, a quarter is 25 cents because it's 1/4 of a dollar. Nickel is called nickel because it used to actually be made with the metal nickel. I don't think it is anymore, or if it is, it's a very small amount. I don't know where a dime came from. Penny is from the British. They use the word penny. Loonie, as I said, because a loon, and then toonie because it's a $2. Anyways, a little history there. So these are our names. Loonie is $1, toonie is $2, and so I might want to assign each value. So we can do that, but it's a series of steps. So let's work with something simple. Let's do day of the week, and then we'll do the coin one as an exercise. So if I wanted to add, let's say, the Sunday in title case, like, for example, Sunday, like that. And I want to do that for each day of the week. What you do first is for each constant, and you have to do this for each constant in your enumeration, but for each constant, you add a space and then a set of parentheses and the value you want to assign inside. Now, as you do this, for each constant, you're seeing these errors pop up. Do not worry. It's just the compiler is being impatient. We are going to fix this. Eventually, these errors will not exist. But for now, just ignore them if possible. Just bear with it. So Thursday. And you have to make sure each guy has one. So each day, each constant must have one. You can't skip one. It's like if you have children, like multiple children, if you give one a biscuit, you can't just give one of them a biscuit. You have to give all of the kids a biscuit, right? Or in the classroom, if you give one kid a pillow to sit on, you have to give all the kids a pillow to sit on because they feel left out, right? Which is good. We would feel left out if it was us too. So you have to give everybody a constant. Sort of like, what's her name? Everybody gets a constant, that lady. So everybody gets a constant value. So Sunday gets Sunday, Monday gets Monday, Saturday gets Saturday, etc., etc. So that's step one. And just ignore the errors. It's fine. At this point, if you had decided to not use the semicolon, Now you must put it there. So at this point now, the semicolon is mandatory. You cannot leave it out. So if you left off your semicolon, because you're like, yeah, it's optional, I'm going to be easygoing and leave it out, put it on. Put that semicolon in there. You must have it. So now what we do is we add a private data member that holds the value that each constant is going to have. So what this does is when you use a constant, this is actually almost like a constructor. So when you use a constant, it's going to take the value in the parentheses and it will automatically store it in your private instance variable. So I'll just call it name. And you don't give it a value. Do not assign it a default. I know sometimes when we create object-oriented classes, we might assign our private instance variables a default. We don't do that. It's not necessary because you will never have a default day of the week, ever. It's impossible, and you'll see why in a few minutes. So when I use Sunday, it's going to take a copy of this value and stick it in that variable. When I use Wednesday, it's going to take this value and store it in that variable. And in order to access that value, because the instance variable is private, it needs an accessor. So public string, and I'll call it getName. I just realized, I think in my written material, I called it display name, but I think we're good. We know enough now that we can adjust. So return name. Now we add an accessor for the private name instance variable. We do not add mutators because it's not like you're going to use the constant Friday and then change its name to something else. That, like, why would you do that? I guess if you wanted to call Friday like, yay, hooray, it's Friday day, I don't know, but we're not doing that. So we don't change the name. It's not something that changes. It's read only. Think of it that way. It's read only. But how then does name get its value? And that's the third thing that we need to do. So the third thing you need, and you might remember when I talked about constructor methods, I said 99% of the time your constructor method will be public. This is the one of the 1% of times when it's not. We actually add a private constructor. So, and it must be, of course, day of week, and it takes a parameter, yikes, sorry, thumb wheel. It takes a parameter for the name. So in this case, I'm going to add string name, and it does not need any validation because it's impossible for this data member to receive anything invalid because you're not going to type something invalid in here. Why would you do that? And so you don't have to worry about validation. So all this does, and we have to use the this keyword, so this dot name equals name. So what actually happens when you use an enum constant, this is where maybe I'm afraid to run my, see if I can close some stuff here. Okay, so I just closed some stuff and I'm running my graphics program so that we don't crash. So what's happening, I'm going to flip back and forth here between these two things, but I got to find my mouse. There we are. So what's going to happen is if I was to write a piece of code that used one of my enums, let's say, for example, let's say I go, for example, day of, of week, day, I'll do day 2 equals, and then I'll go day of week dot Friday. Oh, I gotta write slower because it's laggy. There. So let's say that's the statement I have. So what happens is when I use the day of week dot Friday, what it's gonna do is, let me pop back over here. So it's gonna see this. It's gonna take the Friday string and it's gonna put it in the private name variable. So it's going to see in the definition, it says, this is inside the day of week code, right? It says Friday, and then it's got a bracket, and it says Friday in here. Like that. What it's going to do is it's going to take a copy of this and put it in the instance variable name. So that's going to now contain, it's a string object, but I'll just write it this way. So it's going to take the string Friday. And then what's going to happen is if I then want to say system.out.print or print line, day 2, that's going to automatically invoke the toString. The toString knows to normally print the name of the constant, and so it's going to print Friday. But if I went, instead of saying system.out.print day 2, if I said system.out.print day 2 dot and then get name, guess what it's going to do? It's going to call on the get name method, which is public, and it says return what's in name. And so it returns what's in here. So that's going to cause Friday to be printed on the screen. So what happens is when you use any constant, this value is copied into the name variable by your constructor. So it's your constructor. Even though it's private, when a constructor is private, it just means that you cannot run it or call it or execute it outside of this class. That's because this is called automatically. So as soon as you use a constant in any way or form, then the constructor executes. Think of this is like day of week equals new Friday. Think of it that way. This is like a method call. It kind of looks like one, right? And we're passing Friday into it. So this actually calls the constructor. This Friday is passed into this variable, parameter variable. This parameter variable is assigned to the data member name, which we can then access using the get name variable. So that's why we write it this way. This is how enums are written in Java if you want to assign them multiple values. It's a few steps, but it's actually really easy, and it should seem pretty intuitive actually once you're done. So in my main, if I wanted to, instead of saying day of week, I could say get name, and then that'll print. I'm gonna save everything because it's acting wonky. That will print, there we go, Tuesday in title case, because when I did this and stored my day of the week constant, it executed the constructor and it passed the string Tuesday into the name parameter, which put it in the name data member, and it ended up here so that when I called get name in my main, it returned that actual name. There we go. Easy peasy. So if I wanted to do the same thing with the coin enumeration, I could. And I think that's a worksheet practice exercise. So I'll leave that with you, but you can try it if you want. But if you want another exercise, if you open up exercise 2 in the enum exercises, so add a value for the pizza size constants with the price for pizza. So I've listed the prices. And so I want you to add a constant value for the price. So don't forget to add the 3 things. You're going to need to add, or I guess 4 things. You're going to need to add the value for each one. Because this is a double, the size, the price, you won't need string quotes. It would just be a double value on its own. And then you're going to add a data member for the price, an accessor to get the price, and then don't forget your private constructor. And that will be for the pizza size. And where's the exercise example? And then when that's done, and it doesn't have any errors or anything, write a small piece of code in a main class. So we don't have a main class in here yet. You can add one that just prints a table. So with the name of the constant, and then the size formatted to, or the price formatted to 2 decimal places. And for that, you can use, where's the other main? It was up in here. For that, you can use the, for each loop that we did. So use a for each loop to do that. Cool? Give that exercise a try, and then we'll take it up when we come back. So pause the video now, do the exercise, and then resume the video when you're done. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to try that exercise. So here's my pizza size enum. So I added the price. You'll notice that once you add the rest of your code, and I didn't point this out earlier, the inlay hints, if you have them turned on, will show the data member name, which is really useful when you start adding multiple values, as you'll see a little bit later. So here we have the price for each one. Again, these are double, so we don't put them inside quotes because they're not strings. And then I added my private data member, my public accessor method for that data member, and the private constructor that accepts that price value and sets it to the data member. Easy peasy. And then in my main class, there's my for each loop. So my for loop for each, I called it size, in pizza size, in the values array. And if we didn't review the formatting video way back in week 2, I formatted it so that it printed nicely in columns that were all lined up, as you'll see. If yours don't line up nicely, you may need to go back and review formatting, but it's not a big deal for now. We don't really care. I don't think I'm testing you on that, so it's fine. But it looks nice, right? So there we go. So there's our output for this particular program. Cool? Cool. All right, so there's a few more things that we can do. I'm going to show you in the next video, just to keep things simple. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to add multiple values. For example, under pizza size, maybe I'd like to also add something like the display name. So if I was going to display the actual menu for users or for like customers, probably I don't want to display it in all caps. So maybe I would have like a different display name for pizza size. And then maybe also the cost per topping might be something that I'd want to do as well. So how much each topping is. So if you have a topping on like a small pizza, you're going to use less of it than you would on a party size pizza. So the party size pizza topping would cost more. That's my logic anyway. So we could do something like that. So you can assign multiple values, not just one. You can assign many values to an enum constant. So we'll talk about how to do that in the next video. I'll see you over there.